Okay, my name is Dana Abercrombie, the Coalition. Thank you so much for speaking with me. This is an incredible story that not a lot of people know about. And so I was wondering from you, I know that you was reading the book, you was approached by it, but what was it, a particular scene or moment where you was reading and learning about this journey that you said, this is a movie everyone must see?
That's nice to meet you, by the way.
Thank you.
That's very simple. It
Mhm.
was when I spoke to Mohamedou, the real man, for the first time on Skype. He was in Mauritania. I was here in London at home, and sitting exactly where I am. And
Mhm.
I was nervous about speaking to him because here's some guy who's been in Guantanamo for a long time. He's been tortured. He's been through unspeakable misery. I thought it was going to be painful conversation, and he was going to
Right.
be embittered. And instead, I found a man full of warmth and humor, who loves American culture, who sang Black Eyed Peas, Boom Boom Pow to me on that first call, I remember. It was a song the Guards used to play, and he loved it, and he kind of
Mhm.
danced to it. And who, more than anything else, was able to, has been able to forgive the people who treated him the way that he's been forgiven. This is not a film about hatred. It's not a film that's anti-American in any way, shape, or form.
Mhm.
Every character in this has decency and humanity. And I think that's the message of it, is that actually human beings are fundamentally mostly good people and decent people, and the misunderstandings arise. And it was that feeling of the humanity of Mohamedou. That's what I wanted to express. There have been no movies about, you know, sympathetic Muslim characters, let
Right.
alone a character who is in Guantanamo. And I thought, this guy, this character, I think he will speak to a wide audience around the world. And it's a story that's ultimately uplifting.
Right. So would you say going in, the goal was for the audience to kind of change how they may perceive something without knowing the
Exactly.
full knowledge? Is that what would
Exactly. And I think that's, you've hit it in one, and that people are going to go in with the point of view of these two lawyers, and they're going to go, oh, which of these lawyers is
right,
right? And then you suddenly realize, you're like halfway through the movie, you're like, oh, I don't really care about that. I care about him. I care about Mohamedou. It's become about him. It's
right,
become a character portrait of this guy. And that was the kind of trick that we took to bring people in. And that's the power of having these two great actors play the lawyers, Jodie and Benedict, who are incredibly unvain in this. It's not about them. They know they're
mhm,
not doing it so they, get to showboat and whatever. They're doing it to pull attention towards Mohamedou, because it's very hard to get a mainstream audience, to care about this character. And
right,
I think obviously it's a combination of having those two brilliant actors, stars, but also having an actor like Tahar Rahim, who's an old friend of mine. As soon as I realized I wanted to do this movie, I called up Tahar and said, I got this thing for you. It's going to be great. He and I are working on it from the word go. And, he shares a lot of the characteristics of Mohamedou. He
right,
has this ebullience, this joy about him. Um, he's kind of an irrepressible person, but also, he knew as a Muslim man himself that he had this huge responsibility in telling this story, and he took it so seriously and dedicated himself and went through an awful lot in trying to give this performance. And the nuance and you have to start off feeling like suspicious of this guy. He's a bit unknowable. What's happened to him? And there's all these bits of evidence that maybe point to him being a bad guy, and he has to deal with all of that, and then slowly make you sympathize with him, maybe fall in love with him by the end.
right. So I was wondering, when you was going through the script, what I love about the movie is there are these really amazing quiet moments where he's by himself, and then
Mm,
you hit us with the torture scenes and
mm,
everything that he's going through. So it kind
mm,
of shows peace within the madness. So I was
mm.
wondering, as a director, when you was reading through everything, are you someone who sees the visual first, or is it the emotions that guide you?
Well, that's a really good question. I think that because I come from documentary background, I'm
Mhm.
usually thinking about the the accuracy of the story, the sort of what it's going to look like, that sort of thing. And it takes me a while to get to the emotional side of it, actually. And that's always for me the kind of like the journey that I go on, because I know that a movie only works if it's emotional. Movies are about emotion.
Right.
And in the end, an audience don't care if that door handle was really that color, or whether you know, he really did speak to his mother before he left. They don't care about that. They care about whether they worry and feel emotion for the characters. So for me, that's the journey I go on, and it's kind of I guess in a funny way, it's the journey of this whole movie.
Right. Now, I know you come from a documentarian background, as you were saying. Does that allow you, which you're able to get this script, to really see the humanity on both sides of the story? Because we see characters throughout kind of struggle.
Yes, and I think that's one of the things that I'm really pleased with in this film, is that it's not stereotyping anyone. And you know, we've got these two lawyers. One is the liberal kind of person who's been spending 30-40 years fighting the government, doing the right thing, but actually doesn't connect emotionally to her clients anymore because it's too painful when they let her down, when they're always guilty. But she's like, I'm doing it. She's trugging along. I'm doing the right thing. And then she has, you know, that cynicism is broken by Mohamedou. And then you have on the other side, you have a character who in most Hollywood movies would be the bad guy. You know, he's the right-wing evangelical Republican military guy. But he's also heroic because he's the guy who did what it's so hard to do. And we've seen this in recent days in world politics and in American politics particularly. When politics is going bad, it's so hard for someone on the inside to stand up and go, enough's enough, this is wrong, I'm not doing it.
Right.
And he's the guy who does that. He goes against the tide. The tide is all going one way. Everyone in America is angry and fearful and wants revenge. And he goes, hang on, this isn't right. And I'm prepared to sacrifice my job for it. That's a big deal to do that. And I didn't want, you know, so, you know, it's a movie where actually everyone, all the main characters are shown to have integrity.
Right. So would you say through that, like the Benedict Cumberbatch character is kind of the humanity that kind of guides us through?
No, for me that is Tahar. You know, that
That's
for
not
me
right.
that Tahar is the humanity. I think Benedict and Jodie don't get, you know, they're fulfilling almost like a mechanical function, and that's why I was saying that their roles, they're very unvain in the way that they do them, because it's not about, we don't get that much access to their emotion, their family life, their whatever, because that to me was not what was important. It's them as what they represent that's so important. And obviously we, you know, Benedict gets a good speech where he gets to sort of, you know, vent his fury, where Jodie gets that beautiful moment, which is maybe my favorite scene, where she has read about the torture and she goes to see Mohamedou again in his cell, and she's clearly embarrassed and ashamed about not believing him. And she reaches out and touches his hand, and that small human gesture of contact is like on the screen to me, and it always makes me cry, that moment. And I think that, you know, it's the subtlety of what both Benedict and Jodie do in service of, you know, telling these, you know, they've got the dry parts.
Right.
It's Tahar who has the heart, and also Shailene a little bit. You know, Shailene is a little bit like the audience surrogate, isn't she? Shailene Woodley.
Yes.
You know, she's the ingenue, the naive one going into Guantanamo and looking around and going, oh my God, what is this place? And she immediately reaches out and feels for Mohamedou in a kind of innocent way, in an unthinking way. But yeah, there are a series of interesting characters. I suppose, you know, they all have their different approaches to the material, and it's a complex story. And that was actually the hardest thing about telling it, was, you know, it takes place over many years. And you've got all these different time periods and three different main characters. So to make that story feel cohesive, that, you know, that was hard.
Right. Now, if you could describe the movie using just 3 words, what would you say?
Wow. I keep thinking of things and it's 4 words. I would say
4 is fine.
I would say powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I would say emotional. I would say profound performances. That's 4 words.
That's great, though. Thank you so much. And it truly is all of those words. Thank you so much for speaking with me.
Thank you. Nice to talk to you. Bye-bye.